This is like a smaller group. I hate talking for 20 minutes straight. I'm not that smart. So if you guys have any questions throughout the conversation, I much prefer you to like learn about the topic and like for people to understand it what we need today. So feel free to ask your hand and we can stop and talk. I much prefer that sort of style. Quick introduction. My name's Jacob Everly. I'm the product lead for the protocol that Rhee's building called Boundless. Boundless is really focused, and we'll talk about it more, but we're really focused on bringing ZK to every single chain. In the past, it's been very hard to build ZK protocols. We had this really nice thing called a zkVM, where you can write Rust and sort of generate ZKVs, but it's still very hard to deploy. So we sort of want to bring the infrastructure necessary to deploy these applications to every single chain and make it as easy as just coding a high-level language like Rust, and you're ready to go. Sort of like a real quick show of hands. Does everyone know what an L2 is? Good. So L2s are sort of this thing to like scale up Ethereum. Does everyone know what ZK is? Good. I'm very ahead of the curve. So ZK L2s have been around for 3 or 4 years at this point. I would say they've matured quite a bit. And when you saw this like first iteration of ZK L2s, they were built these things like circuits. And circuits are something we help sort of like nullify the existence of. The analogy I always use is if I ask anyone in this room to code the game of chess, you could probably ask AI to do it today. It's not very difficult. The problem with circuits is we have to represent programs as polynomials. And if I ask you to code the game of chess, but you need to represent it as polynomials, it's very difficult to do. You need a PhD in cryptography. I was actually doing this at one point. I quit ZK because I thought it was impossible. I was like, this is going to get no adoption. You can barely do anything. It's very slow. It's very expensive. So the circuits then caused rollups to sort of have this EVM equivalent style. So to make the circuits faster, you can sort of make them small. And what people like zkSync was doing was making it much smaller to make it faster, but then they weren't fully EVM compatible. So you can imagine that a smart contract running on Ethereum 1, it actually doesn't work on zkSync. Actually, congrats to them. 2 weeks ago, they're finally full EVM equivalent. For the past 4 years, it hasn't been the case, and there's been really great limitations on just how much execution with the gas and and all of that created this sort of like developer fragmentation. Like Foundry, which I think is like sort of Ethereum's superpower, doesn't work with a lot of these L2s. So now you're asking people to, you sort of have this really nice network effect with the EVM, and you're losing it. And you really saw sort of like the stalled adoption of building on L2s over the past year. That's where we come in. So what we sort of did is we wrote this circuit. This is a very heavy diagram that I can get into, but we wrote this circuit, and the circuit looks like a CPU. And what does a CPU do? Just executes arbitrary bytecode. So now for like any user, you don't have to write a circuit anymore. You just compile down to some common bytecode, like we use 32.5, which is what Rust is. And you can just generate ZKVs out of the box. So not only do you not have to write circuits, but you also inherit a bunch of really nice libraries. Rust has been around for like 10 years, 12 years, something like that. But now it's sort of like the foundation of cryptography of the world. It sort of started as a niche thing, but even like all the biggest tech companies are all changing. So Facebook, Amazon, Google, they're all switching to using Rust on the cryptography. So it's a really strong foundation of libraries, which is just really nice for you because imagine you want to do a Ketchup hash or you want to do some sort of like curve. You don't have to write the library yourself. You just grab off the box and do it like the AI library and work. In the zkVM, we sort of, I think this is the key piece I would pay attention to, which I don't really illustrate here. So the executor. So we sort of execute your program once, and then you're going to pass this process off to like some third-party prover. And a really nice thing here is we can sort of prove that that prover has actually run your program. So you'll just get that tiny receipt at the end and sort of your output, and that's how rollups work. So in a rollup, we have sort of a state transition function. And the prover can just sort of run this transition function, and go through all the transactions in a block, and then just post the proof on Ethereum, update the smart contract bridge, and you're done. If we get back to the point of EVM equivalence and being able to use normal code, there's a very popular Ethereum client called Rhei, which is actually written in Rust. So when we build a zk role, which I'm going to say, we just run the client straight up. So we get full EVM equivalence. It's very easy to maintain. We don't even maintain it, Paradigm does. And you just get a fully EVM compatible L2 out of the box. You don't have to build anything, right? Like zkSync, Starkware, Scroll, like these companies raised hundreds of millions of dollars to build this thing. And now you could deploy one in and out. So the abstractions have just gotten so much better in the past few years. Ooh. Hi. Now, for a long time, there was a drawback. I talked about sort of circuits earlier and how they were sort of being more precise to lower costs. Well, now with us, we're inheriting a whole instruction set, which can be quite expensive. When we proved our first Ethereum transaction 2 years ago, it cost $1 US. That's very expensive. I want to do thousands of TPS, thousands of dollars per second, will never work. I can happily say the number is much larger. We can now do over 8,000 transactions for $1, which is cheaper than any blockchain under any sort of load. So now we can just do much cheaper execution. And how have we sort of done to do this? With circuits, you have to change them all the time. So you can't really optimize them. With the zkVM, we have a very stable platform that we sort of get compounded gains. So we bring in GPU acceleration. We optimize the circuit we already have. We start to bring in GPU or ASICs and FPGAs. We can just continuously drop the price. We've been around for like 3.5 years. We haven't gone a single quarter without a 4x gain. And we have some stuff that we're very excited later this year. We just launched V2 of our circuit. We're working on V3, we're working on a new system. We're working with some really popular chip manufacturers in China to build ASICs. So the costs are just going to continue. And the next really cool thing is that middle point. With current zk L2s, to generate the block is quite slow. It can take anywhere between 10 minutes and an hour. But with us, since we sort of have this general purpose stable platform, we can scale very, very, very wide just by adding more machines. And the machines, they don't have to be these ridiculous things. I think to run a prover on Polygon, it takes over 1 terabyte of RAM, 200 something cores, and like a 4 terabyte drive, right? I don't know where I would buy that machine. That's quite pricey. To get a 256 core CPU right now is just like ridiculous. So yeah, I'll stop there. Are there any questions? There's no way I was that clear. Yes, that was clear. And we see the results of that. So we actually did a demo. We ran base as a zk rollup, and as you can see, it's quite cheap. So I said, roughly 2 years ago, we were at $1 per transaction, and we're currently at almost 1/1000th of a cent, which is bonkers. We can do this like trivially. You don't need that many GPUs. You need like 30 to 40 to like really keep up. So it's just coming so far. It really makes operating these rollups so easy. And it's something nice with Prelude is, we can sort of deploy this in a few hours for everybody. I sort of mentioned this, earlier, but like the costs continue to plummet. One thing that I'll talk about in a bit is like, we're sort of building an open market. All the proving currently is done by us, and we use AWS on demand. AWS on demand is very expensive. We've done some testing with like on-prem hardware and like a data center, and it can reduce the cost by another 10x. And then additionally, we are going to get accelerated hardware. We're talking with some big ASIC people right now. Once we move to our new proof system in a few months, we'll finally be able to build one, and the new proof system will be a 30x reduction. The ASIC will be a 10x reduction. So you're just going to continue to see the cost plummet. Sort of what we jokingly say right now is cost has been a really big tension point in zk systems. And this is the last year where we're going to talk about cost. It's going to become like sort of a small line in your business. Yeah, go ahead.
This slide was really
what?
Really often.
Yeah, to like do the zk proof to move the chain forward.
Okay, so like this is not including the on-chain cost of like actually doing the proof on the chain, like verifying the proofs on the.
Yeah, so that's a good point. This is execution cost. Cool thing about Boundless is we do like native aggregation. We can actually get a single proof to request the proof, someone accept the proof, and then verify the proof is only 35K EVM gas, which is, it's pretty much almost a transfer. it's very tiny. We've developed a library called Steel where we can use events really easily now. So yeah, we can get it very cheap. That is with like sufficient volume. To be fair, the volume won't be there day one, but I think in 6 months, that's your on-chain footprint, which is bonkers. There is an additional 20K EVM gas there to update like your smart contract, but that's the role of design. I can't fix that, but still like quite cheap, right? 35K EVM gas today is probably 35 cents. Maybe someone should double check that. I don't know if it's very well. Very good question. Anything else? Yeah, that's a good point. Team's a little interesting right now because you have like Avail and Celestia and Identia, and none of them have really hit price discovery. So they're sort of like, how like in the EVM you have like a gas target. Well, they have like a DA target and they haven't hit it. So maybe like DA 1 point is more expensive than CK proving. But I know right now like DA is pretty much free as well. Like Eigen and Celestia and Avail, they're not saturated at all, so it's quite cheap as well. Great questions. Sweet. Any more questions? So we talked about cost. The next big thing we're sort of after is latency as well. So has anyone heard of real-time proving here? Sweet. So it's going to be a really hot topic. You want to be like cool and in the know. This is going to be a big conversation. It kind of goes along with native rollups and whatnot. Who's heard of like someone mention asynchronous composability between rollups? Sweet, no, that's not me. Okay. So yeah, so this is the idea that weirdly enough, L2s today sort of view Ethereum as like a black box. It seems weird, but like smart contracts on L2s don't really have a sense of like what the current L1 is. And this is bad for obvious reasons. Getting to and from the L2 is quite annoying. The additional thing is, Ethereum is about scaling with multiple L2s. And L2 to L2 communication is even more complicated and not very possible today. And some immediate impacts today is like to bridge from, I don't know, who's bridged from an L2 to an L2 recently? What would you use to bridge?
DSML.
Layer swap, okay. So you probably pay some sort of fee, and it's probably pretty snappy, right? Like, them across Bungie, it's quite good. But the thing is that fee, what are you actually paying for, right? So you sort of have this third party who's willing to put up with your capital, and they sort of deal with the 7-day delay. It's actually very expensive. So each of the big rollups today are bleeding hundreds of thousands of dollars a day to these bridges. And right, this is just getting sucked out of their ecosystems because their users are losing money, right? And the users want to go to different rollups to do different things. And with real-time proving, that actually changes. So real-time proving is about proving an ETH block, let's say 39 gas, under 12 seconds. And what does that allow us to do? Let's say I want to transfer from OP to base. Okay. If I can prove the OP block and the base block under 12 seconds and then submit it in the same block on Ethereum, I can essentially have atomic swaps between these rollups. And this is really nice. We have to stop paying these rich people. We have to stop paying, large market makers for capital opportunity costs within these systems. So it'll be a really nice solution once our ZK system is there to just finally be able to really easily send messages between these rollups. And I guess what? We're not that far. Today internally, we've done a block under 30 seconds. I say we constantly work on these like 4x improvements. We're not guaranteeing by the end of the quarter, but one of the internal teams right now is really focused on this problem. And we hope to be to real-time proving in a practical sense by Q3. I will say, be careful. Someone's going to claim real-time proving before it actually works. So until someone does it in production, it doesn't count. That's what I would say. But yeah, and again, we get this nice property because we can just scale very, very wide in our system. Do you have a question?
No, not yet. Okay.
Any questions about real-time proving? This is a hot topic. There's a research paper that Justin Drake wrote about native rollups. Fantastic point. So I honestly, I don't like the name real-time proving because real-time proving to me is like, oh, you're like the real time of like the execution of the program, which we sort of can do right now. I'd be much better if they changed the name to like ETH real-time proving, but real-time proving is specific to each blockchain. So Ethereum, it's actually not 12 seconds. It needs to be like 9 seconds because you have to do like propagation of the block and get everyone excited essentially. But yeah, so Ethereum is 12 seconds. If you think of it like on a chain like Solana, it's going to be much harder. Right? They have a block every 200 milliseconds. Solana is less relevant with this exact goal because their rollups look so much different. Why do you have a rollup on Ethereum? Storage is super cheap on Ethereum. Execution is very expensive. On Solana, they have the exact opposite problem. Execution is very cheap, right? When I go use Radium, I click a button, now it's but storage is very, very expensive. Actually, to mint an NFT on Solana today costs $15. Yeah, it's very, very expensive because Solana is really fast because they sort of keep all storage and RAM at all time. But they have to make people pay for it, or they'll run out. It's also their machines or something. Sweet.
What is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is getting big.
Yeah, I mean, we're already real time for Bitcoin. Bitcoin is interesting in its own perspective. You can actually verify a proof on Bitcoin now using ETHDimsum. You sort of do it across 3 hashes. We're working with like 5 or 6 Bitcoin rollups at this point. They can all already like sort of aggregate the proofs and change it and have synchronous composability in a sense. There is a problem of like once you desync the rollup block time and the settlement block time, you can sort of get in, right? You're still constrained by the settlement layer. But yeah.
We have interoperability, right?
Yeah, but it's very slow, right? Because the Bitcoin block the Bitcoin finalization is like 60 minutes. So you have composability within 60 minutes. This probably feels pretty slow. Versus Ethereum is trying to get to they already have a 12-second block. They want to do single slot finality. And then once you have like single slot finality and real-time proving, you sort of have this like asynchronous composability problem that, I mean, people have been working on this for like 3 years now. It's been a while. Been a lot of proposals out there. Awesome question. Sweet. Now I say all of that, you know, our system works today, but I would say it works okay, and we want to make it much better. For example, if you want to deploy a ZK system today, you're relying on a single party. Essentially, you got to go to an individual, shake their hand, and say, "Will you generate my proofs for me?" I don't like this. You know, it's what we offer people today, but we can do better. In some cases, it's still too expensive. You know, we're always in this hot pursuit of drop prices, but some people want to do some crazy things. A partner the other day, you know, an Ethereum block for us is like 1 billion cycles. Someone asked me for a 1 trillion cycle proof the other day. So, well, that's kind of expensive, but in 6 months, it could be totally economically feasible for what I want to do. Deployment times are too long. You know, we sort of looked 12 months ago, and every single one of our partners was building a prover network, was building an aggregation solution, was building verifier contracts. So we want to take that away, right? Write Rust, deploy production-ready ZK applications. That's what we're going to do. And that's exactly what my project is. So Balance is the universal ZK protocol. And it's sort of made up of these 3 components. So we have 2 parties. Sorry. You know, we have 2 parties here. It's like the protocol, the app developer, okay? And then we have provers, and then we connect them through a market, which we use smart contracts for. For protocol development, you know, the promise we want to give you is you're going to have the best verifiable execution environment, not just today, but for tomorrow. So how do we do that, right? First of all, you know, we're starting with the RISC-0 zkVM, but there's other zkVMs out there. There's some great teams working on this technology. Our zkVM is not the best for everything, so we want to support multiple zkVMs. Additionally, we want to support, you know, multiple proof systems. We're working on Binius right now. Binius is going to be really good for very big proofs. Binius is not good for proving on an iPhone. We think there's value in generating big proofs. We think there's value in doing client-side proving and sort of privacy use cases there. So we want to be able to support it all. And we want you as a you know, an app developer to not have to worry about choosing a protocol based on the best or the like a ZK tech. We just have the best offers for you. And, you know, again, write Rust, deploy ZK applications. Additionally, we want to go past Rust. We're going to support some other high-level languages in 2025, but we already support a bunch of popular, you know, other blockchain VMs. So we can support EVM. We can actually run Solidity inside the zkVM today. We have a library called Steel where you can do this. You can run Solana virtual machine. You can run MoveVM. You can run BitVM, or you can run, you know, some other alternative VMs. So, you know, there's different reasons to use different virtual machines. You have those reasons. I want to support you. Next is this idea of a proof market, right? This conduit between you and the best infrastructure providers out there, so you know you're getting tested right. So you might have heard, who's heard of a prover network? Sweet. So prover networks, maybe you've heard them in the past 12 months. They come up with mechanisms to guarantee proof generation. That I ask for a proof, and you're going to generate. I want to go a step farther. I want you to ask for a proof, and I guarantee you that I actually deliver it to your protocol, and I don't get paid till then. That's exactly what we do about this. We co-locate a smart contract to your application. We sort of have these market contracts on each of these chains, and the prover doesn't get paid until they give you the proof. So this is like, you know, this is why you're incentivized to do native aggregation. And you as a developer, if you're sort of using a prover network, you've got to grab it, you got to then verify it, you have to pay for verification. It's additional risk for you to do that. It's also just harder. I want to get rid of it. Stop thinking about infrastructure, just focus on the application. Next is that there's no single points of failure. At day one, when we launch, it's fully decentralized. if my company RISC0 dies day 2, it will carry on. I'm sorry. Yeah, that was very good. Hello, okay, sweet. Yeah, if we die day 2, you'll still work day 3. You don't have to worry about us existing. Of course, we're going to continue to improve the protocol, through governance proposals and whatnot. But we cannot afford to launch with training wheels. You'll see a lot of protocols launched today, and there's a multi-sig, or there's a small group of people that can sort of revert changes. Currently, we're going to power who's heard of Eigenlayer? Yeah. So Eigenlayer has this function in their token, essentially, where they can slash that operators. And we're powering, they're using our tech to do the slashing, essentially calculations. This very large calculation you could never do on chain. And the problem with them, so we look at rollups, if the proof shows up, if the proof doesn't show up, the chain just dies. Okay, everyone's mad, why is my chain down? But it'll boot it back up. You're not flat at risk. With Eigenlayer, it's different. With Eigenlayer, if the proof doesn't show up, the funds are at risk. And when you have single points of failure, right, you're just inviting things to get hacked and targeted. So sort of throughout the whole protocol, there's only a one of n trust assumption. Meaning if one person is online, your protocol and your proofs will be generated. Next is, we offer the best latency. We can essentially have your proof delivered or not delivered, but accepted and then generated in the next block. We use the best price discovery mechanism that can be done in a decentralized environment. Of course, the best price discovery mechanism is the second price auction. You can't do that in blockchains because everyone sees each other's bids and then games are played. So we use a reverse Dutch to give you the best price, right? That's all I can do. And there's no redundant work. So on the market, when I submit a request for a proof, someone's going to lock it in, and then only they are allowed to generate that proof. So zk proving can be expensive. It would make it much more expensive if we were all racing. So has anyone heard of Aleo? Aleo was like a zk blockchain. They did a zk proof of work, but they can't really generate proofs that well because it's just way too expensive because they have everyone racing to generate the proof. So the throughput is not that. And then as an app developer, you pay more money, which I don't like. I want cheapest proofs possible. And this last thing is sort of something we call proof sovereignty. If you have to use other proof generation solutions, you're probably introducing trust assumptions. There might be a bridge to transport the proof to you. There might be another blockchain and a validator set that now you have to pay for, actually. And we don't like that, right? Smart contracts work. I co-locate them to you, and we don't introduce any trust assumptions. Also, if you're willing, you can run the market contracts on your chain. And then you really get this sort of sovereignty aspect. Lastly is, I want to work with the best provers, the best, cost. So again, not just get you the best price, but get you the best quality of service. So we're on testnet right now, Sequoia, and we have 10 to 15 provers in testnet already. These people are securing, mining billions each year. So have you heard of like Bitmain? Bitmain, they make the ASIC for Bitcoin, the ANT miner. They're on our testnet. We're working with people that are the biggest validators on Ethereum. So you sort of know that you're going to get this best quality of service. People have tried doing decentralized. I would sort of refer to this as like decentralized infrastructure in a way. And one problem, I think the graph is a great purpose here is like great design, reasons to be decentralized, but it didn't work. And like if your thing doesn't work, no one's going to use it. So want to make sure you get the best experience. People also have experience in bringing accelerated hardware to market. And then it's an open prover set, not just for liveness, but also for innovation. I'm a believer in like open markets. If I make that proof of set open, then people have an incentive to innovate, and it all ends up trickling down to the user, which again, I want the best price for you. Sweet. So summary, we get this like very nice industrial strength in J1. You as a user get the most efficient market, so cost plus latency, and then it should be the best development environment based on your preferences and use case. Sweet. Thank you. Any questions?
How much is the effort of using production library? How much is the effort if the OP mainnet production library?
Yeah, so Kailua is like our OP framework essentially for
Well, you already have that.
So we just took OP's code and we just run it in the zkVM. It actually it's very easy. You deploy one new contract and you do 2 on-chain transactions. I could do it in 10 minutes. I wouldn't do it in production in 10 minutes. As a demo, I could do it in 10 minutes. Right? It's like let's not have systems that get upgraded in 10 minutes. That's asking for trouble. But it's very easy. It's fully super chain compatible. We're talking to some very large volumes right now about changing it. Yeah, so what you'll see is a lot of actually every single L2 at this point. So even legacy ZK systems are sort of changing to our approach of using a zkVM. So ZK Sync just announced a zkVM based on RISC. Scroll is building a zkVM now. Yeah, so they sort of built those custom circuits at first, but then like our approach more, so they're switching to a RISC-V zkVM, and then they'll get the same benefits essentially. So you'll see all big rollups switch to a zkVM based rollup, which I would say as bold of a take this year, because we also make optimistic proofs, OPE proofs much cheaper. So if you want to run the OP fraud proof game or Arbitrum, so OP to run the fraud proof game, any guesses how much it costs us to run the game? $100. Okay. Any other guesses? Sweet. So you have to put down $1 million, and then it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars over multiple days to play the game. It's very, very expensive. So what we did instead of that is we play the whole game in zk. And now in our version, it costs you have to put $100 down, and then the proof costs $5, something ridiculously cheap. And with this, since our game is so much shorter, we can actually get much better finality. So if you're willing to accept that Ethereum is not going to social fork, Ethereum has only ever social forked one time. I personally am okay accepting that Ethereum is not going to social fork. And you can have an OP rollup with 3-hour finality. You just have to make sure you can get one transaction on chain.
What about Arbitrum? Is that as expensive?
Yeah, so Arbitrum is actually more expensive. So anyone want to guess how much ETH it costs to run the game in Bolt, which is Arbitrum's I love Arbitrum. They're fantastic. Very good tech. They're the first ones to deploy a permissionless fraud proof. Guess how much ETH it costs to run the Arbitrum Bolt game?
I know the answer, but it's 5,000.
It's 1 million ETH. So the only one people are Vitalik and Lazarus. It's very expensive because because there's this thing called a whale attack, where someone with a lot of money could delay very often. So they put a really high stake to prevent anyone being something. With us, there's no whale attacks. Anyone can start a proof for anyone can start a dispute for very cheap, and anyone can generate them very easily. So much better. It'll be a very nice sprout if you're familiar with L2 beats. Maybe you've seen people starting to talk about stage 2 rollups. Kailua will be stage 2 very soon. It's actually not really up to the tech anymore. It's about other people getting rid of security councils. And I can't force someone to get rid of their security. Did I answer your original question? I think so. Yeah, so I think I answered your original question. People are just sort of moving to the zkVM approach. It helps optimistic rollups, and then will help zk rollups. I think a lot of people will change to zk fraud groups very soon. It saves them money today. And then as that cost continues to plummet, we'll see more and more people come to the zk rollup, especially as we unlock asynchronous visibility. They'll have a really large financial reason to change.
When you say about 8,000 transactions in $1, and you say a real-time proof.
Yeah.
So are they the same? Are they the same VK proof size?
Yeah, so all the proofs are like constant, or the proof sizes, the actual proving changes. The end of proof is always the same. So are you asking like how much proving needs to be done? Or are you asking like what the final proof is?
I mean, and you don't care about the TA, so the final proof is always the minimum size. So
yeah,
I say when you say 8,000 transactions in $1,
yeah,
it must have a batch size.
Yeah,
right.
So
8,000 transactions in $1. Can these VK proofs be generated in real time?
Yeah, so very good question. Two things to note here is proving cost is sort of linear, except when it comes to proving rollups for some reason. The more you batch, the cheaper it actually gets in our system. It's a little different in other systems, but in our system, you can make it cheaper. So we are doing quite a large batch here, 500 blocks. The block time on base is 200 milliseconds. So that is 100 seconds. So that wouldn't work for like real-time, right? I would say. So if we were to do like a smaller block, that would be like, let's say 50 blocks instead of, or I'm getting there. Sorry, it's 50 seconds. So let's say we're going to do like a 10-second block. That would be like 50 blocks. It would be a little more expensive, I would expect, but still relatively cheap. I would say maybe I'm really shooting from the hip here. Yeah.
I mean, do you have the data?
I don't. These tests are really hard to benchmark with ZK systems. It's like quite difficult, actually. But I would suspect maybe it was 20% more expensive than that. So still not bad. So maybe we go down to like 6,000 transactions at all.
Yeah. So the next question is about the TA.
Yeah.
I think you should care about it because you're building the general VMs. So the data cannot be compressed, right?
Yeah, of course.
If you want to provide the DA, you have to. I mean, the data will be huge. You have high DPS.
You know, that's a great point. I think Celestia and like EigenDA are doing great work around this. Kailua is integrated with both. So if you use Kailua, you can also use Celestia or EigenDA.
But if you don't build the DA on Ethereum, I mean,
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Yeah. I would love for the Ethereum Foundation to prioritize making Ethereum have more blobs.
Okay.
I can't do that work, unfortunately. I think in Petra, in the next, yeah, so like much more, but completely agree. We need more DA on Ethereum, and I don't know if they're going to achieve that. Yeah. Yeah. It would also be great if we could like split blobs. So currently, like most blobs, they're not really like that full. Essentially, like Arbitrum will take up like 10% of a block.
Yeah, currently not.
Yeah.
Because there's no such, I mean, general zkVM and the transaction the TPS there is quite low. But if we do have such high TPS zkVM L2s, the blocks will be full soon.
100%. Also, I mean, we saw like, was it 3 months ago? The blobs were full for like 1 day and they got really expensive.
Yeah.
It was like really bad. So completely agree. We need more blob space on Ethereum. Great question. Great one. Any other questions?
Do you have regulator, for example, there's two application layer to want to use the Celestia to as a dealing? So some of them using IDA.
Yeah.
You will deploy different parts of the single automatic.
Yeah. So, you know, we give people the choice. I think there's a reason to use Celestia. There's a reason to use INDA. I don't make that choice for people, but we can still like, you know, do all the proving and then aggregate their proofs together on a ETHL1 to sort of share the verification. Yeah. Sweet.
All right. Your content data. So we kind of take a break for like 10 minutes and we can move on to the next one. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good questions. Much prefer this than going to talk in front of a big crowd.
Are you leaving?
I'll probably leave in like 10 minutes. I have my talk's at 3:30.
Yeah, so guys, so it's kind of like a small group for people to like communicate deeply. So feel free to check it out.
Yeah. Oh, and if you guys want to check out Boundless, we're on testnet right now. It's the boundless.xyz, or if you just search